Hello and welcome to this episode of Stratola Spectrum. I'm your host, Dinesh Chandrasekhar, founder and chief analyst of Stratola. In this episode, we're going to be talking to Dr. Ron Razmi, a man of many hats. He is an ex-cardiologist, technologist, founder and advisor at ZOI Capital, and author of the book called AI Doctor: The Rise of AI in Healthcare. Dr. Razmi has had an eclectic career. Apart from being a medical professional, he was also a consultant at McKinsey for a few years before he founded a company called Acupera, which was focused on population health management. He has given numerous interviews at various media outlets like CNBC, Fox Business, and so forth. He has also written in various publications like Fast Company and also has his own Substack as well. Join me today in welcoming Dr. Razmi to the show. Hey, Dr. Razmi, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
It's great to be with you. Thank you for having me on the show.
Of course. So, I set the intro by saying that you have these different personalities. You are such a multifaceted personality. You're a doctor, you're a technologist, you're an investor, you're an author. So I want to kind of phrase this episode in such a way that I can actually go into some of these personalities and extract like valuable insights from you, from your different vantage points. So maybe I'll start off by asking you, with all this adoption of AI across healthcare happening right now, from your vantage point of these different multiple hats that you wear, what is this single biggest misconception that you think the smart people in the room have about AI in healthcare right now?
Yeah, I think first of all, having a multi-personality disorder is not fun because a lot of times that means you're seeing problems at every corner. There are business issues, there are technical issues, there are clinical issues, and I discuss all of that in my book. As I say in the uh, preface in my book, that uh, in order to bring technology into healthcare, you need to navigate around these barriers, and each one of them could be a major impediment to success. So, what we have seen in with AI in healthcare is that it moved very slowly, but now it's moving more rapidly, mainly with ambient AI, which I've identified a couple of years ago as this is going to be the first application because I was a practicing cardiologist and I used to hate writing notes. And if this is helping you spend less time documenting and so forth. But the misconception is that AI is going to come in and replace the doctor or radiologist and so forth. I've written in my articles 10 years ago, I was on a panel with Vinod Khosla, and he said, in 5 years, we're not going to need radiologists. Today, we have the largest shortage of radiologists that we've ever had,
Mm.
and AI isn't doing diddly do about it. Even though AI is good at finding lesions, it can detect lesions that humans often miss because computer vision can go after very small lesions. So it is assistive to the doctors. However, replacing a radiologist is a whole different ballgame. And so this idea that because AI has some capabilities in terms of writing notes, reading scans, helping with diagnosis, that now you're going to need less doctors and less nurses and so forth is complete fiction.
I think that same narrative is applicable across like multiple industries as well. Anthropic releases something about like helping legal spaces, and suddenly they're all lawyers are going to be like out of jobs, or like it starts writing code and developers are out of jobs, and so it's kind of like the same narrative everywhere. But it's funny to see that even doctors are held to that same standards. So.
Well, I write a column for Fast Company, the national magazine, and this past year and my first articles this year have been about this issue of AI and jobs, AI and the economy, what happens. And last year, in one of my articles, I reviewed um, this idea of previous technologies that came in and automated entire industries like agriculture or telecom. And if you go back, some of those jobs that got automated were the
Mm.
most common jobs in America. But employment rate over the last 150 years has kept going up. More and more people are being employed. If you look at the telecom industry, um, a phone operator used to be one of the top jobs in the
Right.
country. Excuse me. We don't have any more phone operators, but the telecom industry is employing 10 or 20x the number of people it employed 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So whether AI is more apocalyptic and now it's going to be the one that makes everybody unemployed, I highly doubt it. I think at the end we're going to end up with more jobs, but higher level jobs, higher paying jobs. If you to think AI is going to unemploy everybody means we're going to run out of things to do.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
But the
But,
things
but
we're doing today are the only things available to do. So because AI is doing them, we're not going to be able to have jobs anymore.
um, I want to ask you this in the context that, you just phrased it. One of the biggest, I can say probably nightmares or points of frustration for doctors across the board is this WebMD website, right? So it used to be kind of like this annoying thing because patients would like, research like all kinds of like terms and diagnoses even before they visited the doctor, and they would come in with like these preconceived notions and start suggesting, maybe I have this, maybe I have that. Did you check this? Did you check that? The doctor obviously has like more experience in terms of studying and everything else, but still the patient would like come across as if like, the doctor doesn't know that WebMD knows more. Now we are past that age, and now we just entered this ChatGPT Health age. Now we have like in our pockets an ability to like, just query whatever we want, submit X-rays and like ask these kinds of questions. So as a consumer, I feel empowered, but at the same time, what does it do from a clinician's perspective? Like, what do you think of that kind of empowerment to the patients?
Yeah, I want to say it's a great question, but I think it's a phenomenal question because it's the topic of the day,
Yeah.
which are these LLMs democratizing knowledge? Can you be a more informed patient? If, for example, Anthropic and OpenAI rolled out their health and healthcare offering, and actually through partnerships with BeWell and HealthX, they can have access to your medical records.
Yep.
Therefore, the advice it's giving you is more informed than you just coming in and typing in a prompt. It actually knows something about you.
Right.
So, my opinion on all of this is the fact that um, um, if you actually test these LLMs, you'll see that depending on the question, how you phrase the question, depending on how the information it has, which we know nobody has all of their medical records, it's fragmented, you're going to get answers that could be wildly different for the same person, for the same medical record,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
depending on that. So it's funny you asked that. This week, there's a paper from Nature Medicine
Mm.
that came out that looked at LLMs, different LLMs for answering medical questions,
Mm.
and also assessing your health status based on your data and so forth. So when you feed it nice vignettes, like there are in USMLE exams,
Mm-hmm.
the accuracy was like 94, 95%.
Right.
When you made it more real life like, where all the relevant data is not captured in a nice paragraph,
Uh-huh.
the data is fragmented, the question is phrased the wrong way, the accuracy dropped to 20, 30%.
Wow.
And Microsoft did a similar study that came out 2 months ago, where they actually did the nice, all the relevant information, like the exams, very high accuracy. When they made it more lifelike,
Mm.
where the doctor doesn't have all of your information, it's the information is coming from you in bits and pieces, and they don't necessarily have the all the reports and everything, the
Yep.
accuracy dropped into the 20s.
Wow.
So I think we're going into choppy waters.
Yep.
And we know from testing these LLMs that there are, they leave out stuff, they provide a lot of bad information, which unless you're an expert, you can't pick up on it. Like
Mm.
I do testing and I see where it's missing stuff and where it's leaving out the most important piece of advice.
Mm.
But for somebody who's not medically trained, they don't know that.
Mm. Mm.
So I think these are great tools if you're already an expert
Yeah.
and you can figure out where it's hallucinating, where it's leaving out a piece of information that's critical. But if you're asking me what are the downstream effects in terms of patients showing up and arguing with their doctors based on what they get, I don't know, but I'm glad I'm not a practicing physician.
So maybe a related question there is, if AI is going to reduce harm at scale, right? Where do you think it should start? Is it diagnosis, monitoring, the triage area, or like, reducing administrative burden, which is probably the safest space, in my opinion, so that clinicians can actually think and actually, do what they are supposed to do, right? Where do you think we should start with AI?
Right now, if you look at what is the biggest problem facing our healthcare system,
Mm,
and when I was promoting my book, when my book first came out, I traveled the world promoting the book, Europe, Middle East, Asia, Pacific. I encountered every health system had the same issue, which is shortage of resources.
ah,
When I was in Saudi Arabia, I met with people from the Ministry of Health in Saudi Arabia. Their biggest problem is shortage of resources. Um, People's wealth is going up. Consumerism in healthcare is going up. People want better healthcare. They only have so many doctors and nurses. As a matter of fact, a lot of times they're bringing in people from Asia Pacific,
mhm.
putting them through 6 months of training, and then they become medical assistants. So the shortage of resources is the biggest problem because 20 years ago, we did not do good enough forecasting that, hey, if people are going to live longer, they're going to have more chronic disease and they're going to have more burden and they're going to
Unfortunately,
come
yeah.
in more often and there's more disease. So we don't have the medical resources to handle all of this volume and demand. So if you're gonna bring technology to help, you need to help where help is needed. Doctors don't need any help with diagnosis. 95% of my patients who walked into my office, the diagnosis was already on the chart. You already know what's going on. Sort of the
Right.
diagnostic dilemma is a minority of the patients.
Mm, mm.
Really, what you need help with is all the work that needs to be done in such a labor intensive industry, patient intake, uh, documentation, coding, submitting claims, fighting with the insurance companies around denials. So all of this adds up to a lot more work for the doctors, for the team. That means they can see less patients, they can pay less attention to the patients they do see.
Right.
So if AI can start removing some of that burden, then you're doing good because a doctor who's not fighting with the insurance company, who's not writing notes, is also going to be cognitively healthier to make better decisions, engage more, provide better care for you. And it seems like all of that busy work that's potentially could be automated with AI
Hmm.
is a safe place to start because if AI screws up in coding and claims management, there's not going to be a big lawsuit. So I think given the fact that AI is new, the trust level in AI and all the shortcomings we talked about, it's still work in progress. We don't have to start with the big clinical use cases in order for it to provide value into the system.
Spot on. Spot on. So maybe I'll shift gears into your technologist hat. So if as a technologist, you're looking at this landscape of AI tools that are coming about in the healthcare space, what is it that you most commonly see in terms of patterns? Who's focusing on what areas within healthcare?
Yeah, I mean, I think the macro environment, Dinesh, is the fact that you have um, Medicaid eligibility that's being rolled back, ACA subsidies that are being rolled back. So you're going to have less insured people.
Hmm.
This means lower revenue for the medical centers, tighter budgets. It also means less people, when less people go in to see the doctors, pharma companies sell less drugs. There's less medical devices being put into in procedures and stuff. So there's going to be a downstream revenue effect for all stakeholders in the value chain. And that means they're going to tighten up their innovation budget.
Hmm.
These budgets were never that huge anyways, but
Yeah.
now they're going to be more judicious in what they buy. So which with any of these stakeholders, like life science companies or healthcare providers, even healthcare payers, because oftentimes they're administering these, the Affordable Care Act health plans or Medicaid and so forth. So it could be less revenue for them. You really need to look at the key business problems they're dealing with
Hmm.
to find where they're going to go for their technology needs. They're
Hmm.
going to be judicious. They're not going to have a lot of money to throw around on a whole lot of stuff. So I think for providers, because they're going to need to do more with less, and that's part of the reason I think ambient documentation is getting a lot of traction because the doctors are overwhelmed, and also it helps with nursing um, documentation and so forth. On the life sciences companies, an area that I'm seeing is enhancing their existing products with AI features.
Okay.
For
Okay.
example, um, if you have a device, making it more intelligent,
Hmm.
making it more user-friendly for the providers, but also for the patients. I think this protects their pricing, protects their market share, and they're going to be willing to invest in that. And there's also fear that their competitors are going to do this and take market share from them.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, this raises like so many different questions. The first one is who within the healthcare organization on the technology side makes these calls of, hey, we have to do more with less, and here's what we can do. Is there a CTO within the healthcare organization that makes that call?
So, unfortunately, there's not one persona or one role who's the decision maker here. This
Wow.
is what makes the sales cycle long. You need chief medical officer to weigh in. They need to be responsive to the doctors in the group.
Right.
You have the CTO who says, technically, this is feasible for us to bring this new technology in and integrate it into our technology stack. They're never happy about a new vendor coming in because it's more work for them. And they're
Uh-huh.
usually short staff on the IT side. And they have a lot of other things going on, like maintaining their EHR and helping people with their computer issues inside the health system. And then you have the business people.
Hmm.
the chief business officer, the
Hmm.
COO, who does the numbers and says, can we afford this? Or the CFO, can we afford this? How does this stack up with all the other technologies we're buying this year?
Right.
And what do we knock off if we're going to buy this? We're not going to have money to buy everything.
Right.
So usually they have bandwidth for one or two new use cases per year. No
Mm.
more than that. Even at
Mm.
that, they do a terrible job with change management. They just throw technology at people without
Right.
appropriate training, workflow, all of that stuff. So that makes the sales cycle very long because you're not selling to one person.
Right.
That also means a lot of demos, convincing different stakeholders. And at the end, you need a bunch of people to say no. So you need a lot of dominoes to fall to successfully uh, get into. That's why, like, all of this has been going on with radiology AI, with different use cases. All of a sudden, is adopting ambient documentation.
Right.
It became sort of the no-brainer use case,
Mm.
and now everybody's jumping on board with that.
Got it. Got it. So I asked this purely because a lot of my listeners are also startup founders, right? So they
Mhm.
tune into a podcast like this to understand different perspectives. And for an episode like this, where you come in with this valuable experience in healthcare and the blend of technology in it, people would want to know how to sell into these organizations. I mean, the way you explained it makes it look like really complex. My fear is also that there are some existing incumbents like these EHRs that are entrenched in there for like decades, and
Mhm.
they own pretty much like the monopoly of the market in a way. There are like only two or three that kind of like own the market
Mhm.
from that perspective. Then how do these small technology like AI startups, how are they supposed to sell into a healthcare organization without having to go through like 19 different people, uh, or this really long
Yeah.
sales cycle, which they
Well,
cannot do?
first of all, you can't get in without going through these 19 people. There's no way the CTO is not going to weigh in on a new piece of technology coming in, or
Mm.
the chief medical officer isn't going to be consulted on this.
Mm.
I'm going to get to that. I'm going to use this opportunity to plug one of my thought leadership pieces. I've been writing the AI Doctor blog for 4.5 years,
Nice, nice.
and I moved it to Substack 1st of January for the first time. I haven't had time to promote it yet, but this is my first promotion of my Substack, which
Send
is,
me the link after the episode. I'll be happy to like include
yeah,
that as well.
AI doc. But I bring it up with this question because I actually brought over about a year's worth of blogs into Substack from last year, and I wrote a two-part series on, do the incumbents have all the advantages?
Yeah,
Exactly the question you
yeah,
brought
yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I actually wrote this. That would be a good one for people to read
Okay.
because I talk about the fact that when I was selling Acupera software, which was population health management,
Mm.
we would come into a medical center, and this chief medical officer was interested, chief business officer was a little interested. The CTO would come in and say, look, Epic says they're going to have this, they're rolling out their population health module pretty
Right,
soon,
right.
and it's easier to use what Epic has. And
Because we already have it.
we had created this content-driven population health management system where we analyzed patient data, figured out what needed to be done, both on clinical, socio-behavioral side. We created to-dos for the different team members. So
Yeah.
when you logged into the Acupera software, you were a pharmacist, you had patients on what you needed to do for each one of them. It
Mm,
wasn't an
mm.
analytics engine, it was a workflow engine. When
Right.
Epic finally, a few years later, came out with their product, it was a screen where you can write notes, and they were bringing in your medications and diagnosis from the other part of the EHR.
Okay.
There was no automation, no analytics or anything. However, they successfully blocked a lot of my sale by just saying we're bringing out a new
Bring it out.
module. And if you're a medical center, if you don't have enough resources, if you're overwhelmed with EHR integration because you've bought a bunch of practices and you want to bring their small EHR into your enterprise EHR and a million other things, not bringing in another vendor and having to
Hmm.
add that to your to-do list is attractive. So the startups who listen to this need to know that a lot of times the incumbents could block your sale
Yeah.
using fiction. They don't even need to have a product. By making the promise that they're working on it, it's music to the customer's ear. And they're like, okay, let's wait for this. We've been on the planet for 300,000 years without having this technology. We can go another
Wait for
six
like a
months.
few more months to get
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. So, and oftentimes it's years off for Epic. They haven't even started working on it and stuff. So, uh, incumbents, but also something else that I mentioned in the article, the AI Dr. blog, is they have all the data. They're already inside these customers. That data is fuel to develop good AI tools. So you have to be really, really convinced that what they build is not going to be better than yours because they're sitting on millions of patient records and so forth.
Right.
Um, so coming back to your point on how do you commercialize, I mean, we advise a lot of companies in this space at
Hmm.
ZOI on how they can improve their product and how they can commercialize. Oftentimes, we're the ones who get them into these customers because we have relationships.
Right.
But one of the emerging business models is it used to be B to B to C.
Hmm.
Now it's B to C to B. And you say, Ron, that's turned upside down.
Yeah.
Yes, I had the same reaction the first time I heard it. But
Yeah.
what happened is the sales cycles have been so long. Some of these products, including ambient documentation products,
Hmm.
a couple of years ago, they figured out we'll make our product available to the end user for free. They're going to use it, they're going to love it, and then they're going to put pressure on the organization to buy it as an
So they give it
enterprise.
free to the doctors or like other clinicians, let them use it.
Or
Um,
the nurses and so
okay.
forth. They use it, they become dependent on it. And then when you come in and the CTO says, "Well, Epic is going to roll this out," you have pressure from the inside that says, "I don't want to wait for Epic to roll this out. I'm using it already. It's not HIPAA compliant because I'm using it on my phone. We need to buy a license because I want to use this. I'm not." So the B2C to B is the new thing in commercialization of software when you have the long enterprise sales cycle and
Yeah.
you want to hack that process to some degree.
No, very cool. That's a great tip because I did not know that bottoms up selling was possible in the healthcare space. So this is a very interesting to know. That,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it works in every instance, but ambient documentation is a good example
it is.
where they created demand from the end user.
It is. That's awesome. That's really cool. Cool. So let's probably talk a little bit more about the technology side as well. One of the things that I also want to ask is these types of healthcare AI deployments, right? What is it that proves to be the most challenging when it comes to these types of deployments? Is it like the data readiness, or is it like the workflow integrations with like because healthcare obviously is like super complex. It requires integration with so many different systems. Or is it change management, or the economics, like what you just explained about what's involved in terms of investment, doing more with less and all that? Or is it like the risk and liability aspect of it? What is it like the most important detriment to deploying healthcare AI deployments?
Yeah, yeah, lead the way, right? Um, I would say if we're talking about technology, it's legacy systems that are not necessarily connected to each other.
Hmm.
And Anthony Chang, the founder of AI Med, said recently on a webinar that we were on together, every AI project is a data project, right?
Right.
AI needs data to do its
It
thing.
is only as good as the data, they say. Yeah.
Exactly. And um, I've said this uh, many times. I'll say it again. So if I sound repetitive, that's great. I've said this on CNBC, on Fox, on different interviews. Amazon could have a fraction of your shopping data.
Mm.
Netflix could have a fraction of your viewership data, what you watch, and they can put products in front of you or shows in front of you that you may like. There is no harm from them not having the rest of your shopping or watching habits data. In healthcare, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
I had a call from UCLA emergency room that said, we're putting a pacemaker in your dad. I was like, my dad, I mean, I'm a cardiologist. I know my dad's health. He's got an excellent heart. When did he need a pacemaker? They're like, no, he came in, his heart rate was very low. And, mind you, my dad going to UCLA for decades.
Hmm.
So they had pretty much everything on him. He wasn't like going to different medical centers and stuff. So I'm like, wait a minute, guys. Before we put a pacemaker in, we
Hmm.
got to figure out what's going on. This doesn't make sense. I know him. He's got, so anyways, make a long story short, 20 minutes later, while I'm still on the phone and stuff, my mom remembers when they were in Vegas. Um, he had some nausea. They had stopped by a clinic and somebody had given him a new medication, which
Hmm.
turned out to be a beta blocker,
Okay.
which was slowing down his heart rate. He
Oh.
is about to get a pacemaker because uh, some doctor in Vegas gave him a beta blocker, was slowing down his heart rate. That's what beta blockers do. I don't know why they give him a beta blocker, but he was about to get a pacemaker in a medical center that had 99.9999% of his data.
Wow.
One missing piece was leading to a catastrophic decision on his part. So healthcare data, partial data, unfortunately, is not very helpful.
Mm.
This fact needs to be baked in for everybody out there that if I have all of your medical records from the time you were born till yesterday,
Mm.
but yesterday you had some labs that I don't have, and like your kidney function all of a sudden had a rapid deterioration, it invalidates everything else. Now you're in a totally different ballgame. All the decisions I would make about you are going to be altered because your kidney function deteriorated over the
Hmm.
last
Hmm.
month for whatever reason, and the lab yesterday picked it up. So I would say the biggest challenge is the fact that even within one medical center, a lot of the databases are not connected to each other.
Wow.
And consequently, I'm dealing with partial data, and I could be like that AI output is completely erroneous and could lead to bad decisions and all of that good stuff. So that's a really important piece to keep in mind. My favorite is a company recently we were advising
Uh-huh.
who spent a good chunk of time with this large medical center to get the data they needed to fine-tune their models before deploying it inside that medical center. Some local training of the models.
I see.
When they got the data, it was all high fives, champagne flowing, and everybody was so happy because it was a breakthrough moment. I've been in that situation. Here's the sad part of the story. They were an oncology product. When they went in there, they couldn't find any of the oncology data. And then they realized the oncology team is in a different EHR at the same medical center.
Oh, so it wasn't connected.
It wasn't connected, and the oncologist had said, we like this EHR. Oncology is a big money maker. Nobody takes on the oncologist to say, no, you need to come inside that EHR. If the CEO showed up to the oncology practice and was like, you have to come in the EHR, they're like, no, 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 we're staying on this EHR. So that champagne, unfortunately, they drank the champagne before they realized none of the data they needed was in the data that they got from the customers.
Wow. Wow. What a fabulous
So,
example.
so these are the types of things that could really derail projects. And I detail this in my book that Mount Sinai is full of stories because they were a first mover in the health AI space, turning on radiology algorithms for pulmonary embolus and other things, which totally underperformed in real world settings.
Wow.
Models trained on whatever data the company could get. The FDA has set the bar very low. They say, oh, you three independent radiologists read the same scan. You were as accurate as the radiologist. You're approved. You can start marketing this. But that data was limited, was not heterogeneous. Now you go into the real world and you get exposed to uh, much more heterogeneity,
Right.
and the model starts underperforming,
Mm.
right? So the
Mm.
underperforming model now is doing false positives, false negatives. Radiologist is noticing this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
these stories are all over my book of decommissioning uh, AI solutions that had already been rolled out. And after a few weeks, they're like, okay, this is crap. Let's get rid of it.
Yeah. So for people listening in, your book is called The AI Doctor. And in that you write for builders, buyers, and investors. All right. So you
Mhm.
kind of talk about all of them. If you have to give a single adoption framework that all three should share, what is it? Like, what variables matter most? Is it like data, incentives, workflow, reimbursement?
So I mentioned at ZOI, we advise health AI companies. We've actually developed some frameworks,
Mm,
scorecards
mm.
that we use. There's a scorecard for the use case and a scorecard for the company. And these scorecards have worksheets for every criteria that's on the scorecard. We actually go through this structured process. Are you solving a mission critical unmet need? Is the data available to train your models, but also is the data available in production?
You're right.
Once you go live, what's the complexity of the sales and marketing process? So we have these set criteria, and in the worksheet for each one of these criteria, we have specific area we dig deep into. As a result of that, oftentimes we find, for example, yes, you were going for this use case, but what you have is a better fit for this other use case, which is actually an area where your potential customer, be it drug companies or medical device companies or clinics or big health systems or payers, are spending money.
Hmm.
That's first, you want to make sure you're solving for a problem where
Right.
they're actually spending money on that problem. That's a critical piece to keep in mind, that you can have a good use case, a good product, and get zero adoption.
Mm.
And you say, well, how is that possible? Look, a good use case may not make the top five.
Right.
If I'm spending money in my top one or two unmet needs, if you're number six or seven, that means I'm going to get to you in 3 years.
Right.
Which company could wait 3 years for their customers to finally start spending money? So if you're developing a radiology solution that reads a scan and provides a little benefit to the radiologist, that's a tough slug because the insurance companies aren't paying for this stuff now. Medical centers are not in the business of paying for care. They're in the business of providing for care. Radio, AI to assist radiologists in reading mammograms was approved in 2017.
Mm,
It still
mm.
doesn't have reimbursement. So if you want AI to run on a mammogram you've done, they ask you if you want, we can run AI, but it's $40 out of pocket.
I see. Interesting. Hmm.
Yeah, so consider reimbursement, consider these factors before you spend 2, 3 years building something, because you could have a good solution, but the market's not ready for it.
Fantastic. Love that idea. But if I were to like, flip it slightly and ask you if you were advising the CIO or the CDO of a hospital, the one of the or two of the 19 people that you mentioned, what three questions would you ask before approving any AI that touches like clinical workflow?
Clinical workflow.
Yeah, clinical workflow. Like, what is it that they should really look for? Is it like auditability, human in the loop design, or like model drift, like, the kind of things that you spoke about in terms of accuracy,
Yeah.
safety,
On
regulation,
on
anything?
on, on clinical stuff, unfortunately, because I've been abused by everybody in healthcare, given that I've worn different hats, my first question is going to be, is it reimbursed?
Uh-huh.
If you're bringing, once again, providers are not in the business of paying for care. They're in the
Got it.
business of providing care.
Right.
So if I'm bringing this in, um, am I going to be paid for it? If I'm paying for it, what's the benefit to the institution?
Mm.
Does it um, keep all of my radiologists from resigning and going to my competitor across the street that has this and it makes their job easier?
Uh-huh.
Is it because the doctors are making so many bad diagnoses that I need to give them an AI tool before they kill everybody? So for the clinical use cases, there are some very tough questions to ask.
Okay.
Because as you mentioned, you're taking on the medical liability risk.
Yeah.
If a mistake is made by AI and the doctor acts on it, the liability resides with the doctor.
Mm.
We do not have autonomous AI tools that, if they mess up, you can go sue the company that built AI. These AI tools clinically, they're assistant to physicians.
Right.
There's a tool that looks at for diabetic retinopathy
Mm-hmm.
on a
Retin
fun,
scan and
fundoscopic image, and it's an FDA-approved autonomous tool. It doesn't need an overread. Basically, the logic is because like very early stage diabetic retinopathy, nothing, the ophthalmologist doesn't do anything. It just gets watched. Not the treatment is really controlling your sugar and managing the diabetes. You don't need to be referred to a ophthalmologist for those. So the logic is if it's so mild that AI is missing it,
mm.
then it's not something that needs an overread by somebody else.
Got it.
But almost everything else needs human supervision. And if you're a decision maker, you need to think about the economics of that. And
Got
the
it.
doctor, and as far as I know, no doctor organization is throwing up barricades and protesting to get AI right now. So it's not like there's a stampede of doctors coming into your office saying, buy me this AI tool that helps me do my job or starts doing my job for me. Uh, Therefore, I think the economic analysis is going to be an important piece of this. The economic benefit needs to be massive for them to take the plunge in terms of legal liability. As you mentioned, the question of how did it arrive at its conclusion? Could we trust it?
Yeah.
A lot,
Auditability and all that. Yeah.
a lot of these solutions do not have real world studies that's documented their benefit.
Mm.
And I mentioned that in the book that the lack of clinical evidence is one of the barriers to adoption of these tools.
Mm. As somebody that is like been on like both sides of the spectrum, I feel like you have an advantage and a huge disadvantage as well. Then you're an investor and you're like looking at these technology companies that are coming up with these AI solutions, what do you even look for when you evaluate those health companies? Because you seem to know what's under the skin, what they're lacking, and all that, which means you're going to find fault with practically every single company that you look at. So, how do you even like determine what makes up a good health AI company? Is it like their distribution strength or like regulatory strategy that they've adopted, or like the proof of reimbursement, as you said, or
You're right. Majority of stuff that we put through the scorecards, we find issues with it. And when, as investors, that also means putting them through the scorecard to see if this is investable,
Hmm.
finds a lot of issues. But I have some bad news for you. The success rate in digital health for companies that are founded to reach an exit is 2%.
Oh my God.
Yeah, of overall VC ecosystem is 7%. 93% of companies never make it to an exit.
Hmm.
In digital health, it's 2%. 98% of companies don't get to an exit. So,
Wow.
so when you're saying, you're at a major disadvantage, yes, but it is an advantage in the sense that we find the bad news early on, that unfortunately this is going to face data issues in production, that the CFO is not going to be excited to write this check, or the sales and marketing is very complicated for it.
Right.
If you're selling to clinics, you have to go door to door to sell to all of these clinics. That's a high customer acquisition cost,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? So when we're advising companies, um, it's always let's go through the scorecard to figure out what are your prospects, what are your chances of success. And I always tell them we've never told somebody, we've never advised a company and told them, throw this into the ocean and go build a pineapple factory. We look at it with that informed point of view of a realistic landscape of what you're looking at. We figure out where you can take that
Mm.
and where you might be able to have a hook to get a foothold and start creating momentum and get some revenues going and get some real life evidence of how people interact with your technology so the market could catch up with you. Um, so that good upfront analysis is never a bad thing. It's only figuring out problems that you're going to encounter later. And that's a good thing because you just did not invest 4 years of your life building something and being frustrated commercializing and saying, God, I created the wrong technology for the right moment in time.
Uh, Maybe one related question on that, real quick. We're running out of time, and but this is a great conversation, and I don't want to miss this one. Is that what's the moat that you think that is there in this particular market for these types of startups? Because what I find is these foundational models that are out there come up with these fantastic, new features, capabilities, like what I said, like ChatGPT Health, or
Mhm.
in the legal space, what Anthropic announced and all that. They
Right,
practically killed thousands of like startups that were like trying to do something in that front, and then like wiped out because these guys came out with something like this. So,
right.
which then begs the question, where is the moat for these startups? So what do you see as that moat for these startups?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think those products that got wiped out because ChatGPT rolled out something that's been trained on all the internet data and could look at your partial health record and give you some information, those companies weren't going to make it in this tough, uh, specialized sector. The moat is building a product that takes into account workflows in the real world, redesigns those workflows in a way where people don't even feel their workflow has been redesigned. I mean, the Acupera product initially was supposed to be for the doctors. Then we realized the doctors weren't using it at all, and they had no interest in ever using it.
Mm-hmm.
But we realized it was good for care management teams that were supporting a doctor.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
So, um, your workflow integration, God forbid in healthcare, we start automating some stuff, which has never happened. Like the one big technology that's been adopted in healthcare has been EHRs, which
EHS.
destroyed everybody's lives. Like sent half the physician to psychiatrists because they had to start typing notes and stuff. No automation, no analytics, nothing. It's just made clerks out of doctors. So once again, let's go back to basics and foundational principles. Good, deep understanding of the sector that you're bringing technology into, understanding the workflows, understanding the data models, figuring out how your solution could avoid more work, could eliminate work, could streamline workflows, fit
Mm,
into what they're already doing, rather than what we initially tried to do, which is taking the doctors out of the EHR, a total loser strategy.
right,
That's not
right.
going to happen. So the date, being able to have models that are trained on good, solid sector-specific data, good workflow integration.
Yeah, I think that's a big key
Believe me,
thing.
that stuff is not commodity.
Yeah, yeah.
There are people who take LLMs and put a wrapper on top of it. Other people could do that. That's too easy. Also, something else to keep in mind,
Mm,
these LLM calls are pretty expensive.
yes,
So it used to be software uh, gross margins were 85% plus. Now it's in the 60s because these LLM calls are more expensive. And
right.
I don't know if people realize this. The inbound calls, input tokens, which is what most people are using, are a lot cheaper than when there's reasoning and there's an output where an action is taken. That's 20x more expensive than the input tokens.
Mm, mm,
So think about your unit economics. If your product runs on top of an LLM
mm.
and you have input tokens, you have output tokens, what does that do to your unit economics? Are you going to have any money left
Yeah.
after you pay the LLM? So I think another mode could be small language model
Mm,
you develop on your own, which has lower latency, much cheaper for you to run, especially if it's your own, and significantly improving your unit economics.
yeah. Trained on your data, not like internet data and all that. So I think,
Exactly. So, and small language models are cheaper.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
spot on, spot
Yeah.
on. Dr. Razmi, this has been a fantastic conversation. Loved your insights, loved your humor. This was a very, very, this is not what I usually have on my podcast series. You know, my podcast series are like mostly like technology executives that talk about like the technology space in general. But this time we got into a domain and brought in technology into it because of your wonderful background. So, loved having you on this one. Thank you so much for being here.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.